Well, I mean, I have to say my first thought was excitement, right? I mean, some possibility that some people would have answers, even generations later, even just interested parties, people who enjoy the true crime genre, would have some idea of who actually committed these crimes. It's an exciting thing, right? The thought of, and when I read the news reports, I thought it's 100% match. I mean, my sort of red flags went off, but I thought, wow, this is really amazing. I wanted to also get granular and figure out just what they had found. You know, what kind of DNA had they used? What did they find? Where did they find it? What was the connection? And so, you know, after your call earlier, I decided to really take a look at this and see what was specifically was going on in the case.
Okay, so give me your summary. What'd you find out? And then did you change how you felt about this miraculous news?
Yeah, I mean, not to blow the punchline, but yes. So the DNA used here is what's called mitochondrial DNA. It's a much smaller strand than the regular nuclear DNA we use to identify people. And as such, just right off the bat, it doesn't have the kind of power to identify someone individually that nuclear DNA has or cellular DNA. This is DNA from a small organelle that's inside the cell, and the DNA strand is much, much smaller. We have the second problem of the fact that this DNA is degraded over years, right? DNA degrades in the environment when it interacts with oxygen, sunlight, heat. And so the strands of DNA that were measured in this particular case, they'd never been measured before in this manner. So they were very small strands, about 100 base pairs, compared to millions and millions and millions of base pairs normally. And so hundreds of base pairs long. And having not ever been compared before, there's no real statistical analysis on how rare they are, how much they occur in everyone's mitochondrial DNA or everyone in that area in England and London. And so finding a few matches on a few of these sites, and in fact, in this particular case, 7 out of 9 sites, gives you some information, but it's not nearly enough information to say with any kind of certainty that this is the man that is Jack the Ripper. I mean, it is a mile from saying anything like that.
And the degradation, 135 years, obviously this wasn't kept in an ice chest. It wasn't kept in serene conditions. It was thrown in the police lockup, eventually was out to auction and in history houses. So chain of custody, for one, I could see a good defense lawyer winning it on that alone. But the degradation I'm concerned about. However, in the Brian Koberger case, you've got a tiny, tiny little specimen of DNA that was sent down to Othram Labs in Texas. They were able to, I don't know the science, but develop it out into a sample that was, robust enough for genealogical tracing. And I wonder if the same thing could happen here, or are we at a level with mitochondrial DNA that doesn't really pass that sniff test?
Yeah, this is apples to oranges. Nuclear DNA, you can develop a full nuclear profile, full DNA profile, or an identification profile today from a single cell's worth of DNA. I mean, the kits that are used in labs today are unbelievably precise and unbelievably sensitive as to being able to extrapolate a full DNA profile from one or two or three, just a handful of cells. Mitochondrial DNA is a completely different matter because not only is it a much smaller DNA molecule, which is why it's still here, right? Which is why it's not quite as degraded. The pieces of it are still able to be measured at the small level. But unfortunately, mitochondrial DNA is shared by everyone in the matrilineal line. So every mother to daughter, to daughter to daughter, all the sisters, all of their daughters, and all the sisters at every generation and their daughters at every generation. And so there are a tremendous number of people. And in fact, the frequency used to say that this particular man matched, quote unquote, matched or was concordant with 7 of 9 locations they tested, it still only turned out to be about 2% of the population of people in London at the time. So 2% of the population of the people in London would not have been excluded as a possible contributor to these possible small fragments of possible mitochondrial DNA left on an item that you indicated a moment ago traded hands over and over again between owners, between different custodians in different places in museums and personal homes and collections and down through family members. And so there's another assertion inside this analysis that says, well, we found new DNA or DNA that was complete that we can decide was the was the last owner's DNA, and then we found some old DNA that was degraded and incomplete, and that must be the historical DNA. But what about all the other people that touched this item in the 137 years between the date of the murder and the date it was tested? The information just isn't there in the science to be able to show exactly when the DNA was deposited and by whom.
So I only have time for a one-word answer, but I think I know what it is. This would or would not stand up in court.
It would not.
I had a feeling that's what you were going to say. Jarrett Ambeau, I'm so appreciative of your wisdom. Man, you are a smart cookie. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.